Well, hello and welcome again to Classic and Sports Car Centre near Malton. Now, the subject of this afternoon's video is a very unusual Vauxhall. Right at the very beginning of my career in the motor trade in 1976, some of you might remember the long hot summer of 76 where we had a drought, I started working for a company called Wallace Arnold Sales and Service in Leeds, and this particular model of car, by that time badged the Vauxhall VX, was still being sold new. And cars of the type I'm going to present to you now, 1973 Vauxhall Victor, were the sort of things that came in part exchange. There were two variants, the 1800 and the 2300cc, and the 2.3 was definitely the one to have. Not much of a fuel penalty compared to the 1.8, and actually more reliable. I remember one of the salesmen that I worked with in those days was an ex-motorcycle ace called Jack Brett, who'd been a team rider for Norton, and his company demonstrator was a 2.3 Vauxhall VX, and he could make this thing fly. Now, the example that we've got here is unique in my experience in the classic car business in that it is the most original example really that I've ever seen. Now, the mileage is 45,000 miles from new. It still bears the original number plates that it left the factory with, and obviously it's had very little use over those years. But what's unique about it is the condition. Well, I often ask the question, what makes a classic car a classic? Here we have two Vauxhalls. They're now both considered to be classic cars. What about the modern one though? The Vauxhall Victor, is that really a classic? Well, my answer to that question is yes, because it is a rare survivor of a particular genre of cars. Very few Vauxhalls from the 1970s survive in comparison with the enormous numbers that were built. I mentioned earlier that I was a Vauxhall dealer in the 1970s right up till 1980, and this is a product that I actually, at least the VX version, that I sold new. And I remember these cars, and I remember they were quite quick. A 2.3 Victor was quite a quick car in its day. Vauxhall was still struggling with the reputation that they had in the 1950s and 60s for being cars which rusted very quickly. The pre-war Vauxhall was a very substantial car by comparison, and I think something to do with the grade of metal that they were using and the preparation processes in the 50s and 60s meant that the early Victors and Crestas were, they turned to iron oxide very quickly. By the time we get to the 70s, Vauxhall are really trying very hard to shrug off that reputation, and the cars were better built, but still they did rust. And so it's all the more remarkable that after 47 years almost, we have a Vauxhall of this type that's still in such amazing condition. And that's because it's done only 45,000 miles from new. But one of the first things that I would say is that it is remarkable, but it's not perfect. And I'm going to give the paintwork 6 to 7 out of 10. It's bright and it's shiny, but it's been touched up in lots of places, and there are many marks and imperfections. Would I do anything with it? No, I'd like to preserve it in this sort of condition. It's clearly been garaged for the majority of its life. You've only to look at the chrome to see that it's had a very cosseted life, particularly the bright work around the windows. The seats, the door trim panels, the dash, they're all in absolutely remarkable condition. There is some fading of the carpet, some sun bleaching. They are, after all, 47 years old, but they are the original set. If you can see in there, there's really very little wear on the pedals. And the dash is just great. Well, how many times have you heard the description, the back seats have never been sat on? Well, I can't say that, but what I can say is that they are completely unworn, as are the door trims. And look at this for the original wheel arch of a 70s Vauxhall. These were spot welded together when they were manufactured, but it's amazing really. And there's a view with the tailgate up. And as you see, the car has had towing equipment, possibly a trailer or maybe a caravan in its early life. Unfortunately, the original rubber corner pieces have perished and they've been covered over with sealer. Whether it might be possible to acquire those, very hard to say. I think that might be an auto jumble job, but obviously the guy's done that to make it watertight. And here in the engine bay, well, the inner wings are absolutely amazing. I mean, they used to rot away, but look at that. There are a couple of areas, I'll just show you this. There's a drip of what we used to call red lead, the red lead paint. And I suspect what's happened, because these front wings on Victors would last 5, 6, 7 years, I suspect at some point in its history it's had a pair of front wings fitted. They've got a ring to them, which means that there's no sort of mud and muck attached to the inside. And I reckon that what's happened is somebody has red leaded the area before they fitted the wings, and there's been a couple of drips there. What I can say, because I remember it, is that's the original factory sticker for the fact that the car is negative earth. So that inner wing has never been repainted. That is factory original. There's just one, I would say, significant area of damage on it. You might be able to see it in the reflection, and that's a crease here. And so there's a crease there, and you can see it's also slightly caught the wheel arch here. Now, at the price we've advertised it, we are willing to do some paintwork to it, but that's really subject to negotiation. Could it be used as it is? Absolutely it could. And I really think that if you turned up at a show field with a car like this, you're going to get lots of people commenting on it, because you really just don't see them like this anymore. Well, genuinely, this is the first time I've driven one of these since I was 25 years old, and I've just had my 65th birthday. 1980 when I finished with Vauxhall. So it starts very easily, so a very quiet engine. So one of the things I'm going to particularly watch out for is gearbox noise and gearbox functionality, because to be fair, and some people would argue with me about this, but certainly in the 70s Vauxhall gearboxes were not as strong as Ford gearboxes, and particularly on the second and third gear noise, that they were quite they could be quite noisy, and that's perfect. No unusual noises on the third gear. So, runs absolutely lovely, everything as you'd expect. I'm going to test the quality of the synchros as I come down the box before I turn round. So this is a bit early to go into third, but no crunch. Second is often the weak one. No crunch there. So she's got a super gearbox. Now that's a lovely car to drive. So what's wrong with it then? Well, I found something. Perfect example of why people should come to a dealer. The car runs absolutely lovely, but remember, I drove these cars when they were new. That speedo says 60 miles an hour. No way in the world. We're not going more than 50. And I think I know exactly why. What often happens is that people will take the car to a tyre fitter, ask for a new set of tyres, and because it's not obvious, in other words, tyre fitters are so used to fitting low profile tyres, they'll fit an equivalent low profile tyre. Doesn't work. So I will guarantee the rolling circumference of these tyres is lower than it should be. So when I get out of the car, we're going to have a look at the brand of tyre and the size, and that will prove it. It should not be on a 60, 70 or 75 profile tyre. It should be on a standard profile tyre, sometimes known as an 80 profile, and so whoever gets this car from us, they'll get it with a new set of tyres on of the correct size. Now there's nothing unsafe about it, but can you imagine if you're going along and you think you're going 60 miles an hour and you're actually going 50, you're going to be an annoyance to other people. So it needs a correct set of tyres fitting. So there we go, notwithstanding any inaccuracy in the speedo, there's a tyre size difference of over 6%. So the speedo reads 60, often car speedos can be 10% out anyway, add another 6%, you're basically doing just over 50 miles an hour and the speedo says 60. So great reason to buy from a dealer. People wouldn't normally find out something like that.